Something extraordinary is unfolding right now. Boeing, once the ultimate symbol of American dominance in aviation, finds itself on the brink of collapse. After years of declining sales and eroded trust, the company is now pleading with Beijing to place an order for 500 aircraft just to survive. Think about that. The largest U.S. aircraft manufacturer now depends on China's decision to stay afloat. If Beijing refuses, America's aviation leadership could vanish overnight, with France's Airbus ready to take the top spot. But Boeing is not the only storm on the horizon. Across the Atlantic, Germany, the economic engine of Europe, is running out of steam. Factories are slowing down. Exports are collapsing under Trump's 15% tariffs. Energy prices have soared since Berlin gave up Russian gas. Authorities are trying to plug the gap with billions of euros in emergency spending, but the foundation of German industry is cracking. The slogan, "Made in Germany," risks becoming an empty shell. Plants are shutting down, and jobs are disappearing. And then there is South Korea, an ally caught in Washington's grip. Trump forced Seoul to pour $350 billion into U.S. projects while keeping tariffs intact. Korean conglomerates are building factories in America, buying American weapons, and issuing dollar-denominated bonds to prop up Washington's financial system. Meanwhile, China is advancing in technology and shipping, leaving Korea trapped in a cage it cannot escape. So what happens if America ends up as the one begging? Germany will drown in debt and decline, while allies like South Korea will be forced to pay the price for someone else's choices. Let's break it down. Let's start with Boeing. A company long considered the pinnacle of American engineering is now living through the darkest period in its history. What was once the pride of the United States is slowly crumbling, shaking the entire aviation sector. By 2024, Boeing was already drowning in debt, borrowing tens of billions just to stay alive. But instead of stabilizing, the situation kept deteriorating, pushing the aerospace giant into desperation. The problems had been building for years. The 737 MAX disasters in 2017 shattered trust. Fleets were grounded worldwide. Its reputation was permanently scarred, and then COVID-19 hit, crushing global demand for air travel. But the most devastating blow is happening right now. China, the fastest-growing aviation market in the world, turned its back on Boeing and embraced Airbus, which has delivered hundreds of aircraft. And this is not just the loss of a single customer. China is the future of global aviation. Forecasts show that over the next 20 years, it will account for nearly 1/5 of global demand for new aircraft. Without that market, Boeing loses the greatest opportunity of the century. That is why the company is begging Beijing for an order of 500 planes. This is $500 billion in contracts, tens of thousands of jobs, and the prestige of American aviation at stake. And this battle has long gone beyond business. The US government has tied Boeing's fate directly to trade talks. Trump is trying to sell the deal as part of a package with agricultural and industrial goods, essentially telling China, buy our planes or prepare for new tariffs. But China has options. Airbus has already entrenched itself in the market, and China's own state-backed manufacturer, COMAC, is emerging as a serious rival. Its C919 aircraft are already flying domestically, with nearly 50 delivered in 2024. International certification is on the way, and COMAC is preparing to expand into Asia, Africa, and beyond. State support gives China every reason to reduce its dependence on Boeing. For Americans, this is a nightmare. The long-standing Boeing-Airbus duopoly is breaking apart. Airbus is profiting from its rival's weakness, while COMAC is pushing Boeing out of the Chinese market. The logic is simple. Why trust an unreliable partner when stronger and closer alternatives exist? Even Trump has not hidden his frustration. He publicly lashed out at Boeing over delays with the new Air Force One, a project meant to symbolize American engineering, but instead turned into yet another embarrassment. If Boeing cannot deliver a plane on time for the president himself, why should China trust it with an order of 500 aircraft? The stakes are enormous. Every lost contract means billions in missed revenue, tens of thousands of jobs at risk, and growing conviction that American industry is losing its edge. Losing China endangers not only Boeing's future, but also America's image as an industrial superpower. Boeing's collapse is not just the downfall of one company, It is a signal of a much deeper shift. When an industrial giant begins to fall, Washington does not stand by. It intervenes, and from that moment, the entire system of American capitalism begins to change. What once belonged to private shareholders turns into a tool of state policy. Think about what that means. Companies like Palantir, already closely tied to intelligence and military contracts, could fully transform into instruments of state surveillance. Defense titans like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman, symbols of U.S. military might, may gradually evolve from profit-driven corporations into structures that primarily serve government interests. At first glance, this might look beneficial. Companies gain stable funding and long-term guarantees. But the reality is far more troubling. America is essentially adopting the very methods it has spent decades criticizing China for: state capitalism. And this process is already underway. Not long ago, Washington bought a 10% stake in Intel, one of the world's most important tech giants. This was not a temporary loan or short-term relief. It was a step that made the US government a shareholder with the power to influence strategy and decisions. For decades, American leaders condemned Beijing for steering its largest industries through state ownership. Today, Washington is quietly doing the same, and Intel is only the beginning. If the US is ready to hold shares in a semiconductor giant, what would stop it from doing the same with Boeing, Palantir, or companies at the core of artificial intelligence and the defense industry? China is not just seeking to compete, it aims to dominate. And every step Washington takes towards state capitalism only hands Beijing the perfect argument: America is no different from us. The real threat here runs deeper than economics. And now, let's shift from Washington to Europe, because what is happening in Germany today could reshape the entire continent. For decades, Germany has been the industrial heart of Europe, the country that set global standards in engineering and exports. Today, that reputation is crumbling, and fresh data shows the downturn is accelerating. In the second quarter of 2025, Germany's economy contracted by 0.3%, worse than expected. This officially pushes the country into recession. Exports are falling sharply. Investment in mechanical engineering has dropped by nearly 2%, and construction has fallen by roughly the same amount. This is no random fluctuation. It is the direct result of US tariffs choking demand for German goods, weak global markets, and the energy crisis that never truly ended after the cutoff from Russian gas. The crisis is hitting not just industry, but households as well. Consumer confidence has been falling for 3 straight months. In August, Germans once again cut their spending, worried about job security and rising prices. And when families close their wallets, demand disappears, making recovery even harder. Berlin's response was abrupt. The government temporarily suspended its strict debt breaks and launched a €500 billion fund for infrastructure, green energy, and defense. Borrowing above 1% of GDP is now permitted, justified on grounds of security and climate needs. Goldman Sachs forecasts growth of just 0.4% in 2025, more of a weak pulse than a real recovery. Meanwhile, debt is climbing rapidly. The Bundesbank expects the deficit to exceed 4% by 2027, with overall debt rising above 66% of GDP. For a country long seen as Europe's financial anchor, this marks a historic shift. Yet even with massive injections, the effect is barely felt. Business confidence ticked up slightly in August, but economists warn growth may stall again by the third quarter. Energy remains the most painful weak spot. Germany is betting on American LNG to replace Russian supplies. The EU has pledged to purchase $750 billion worth of fuel from the US, but experts doubt these promises will be fulfilled. German factories need vast volumes of cheap, stable energy, and right now, it simply is not there. A new LNG terminal in Wilhelmshaven will soon open, supplying 1.5 million homes by next year. Helpful, yes, but far too little for an economy of this size. The country is caught in a squeeze from all sides. Tariffs are crushing exports. Energy is too expensive, making production uncompetitive. Emergency spending is driving the nation deeper into debt, while ordinary citizens lose faith in the future. Put it all together: the deepening recession in Germany, Boeing begging for orders, and Washington quietly copying China's model of state support. And it becomes clear, these are not isolated events. They are pieces of a single mosaic, and the picture is troubling. An America that can no longer lead without pressure, allies backed into a corner, and a China ready to exploit every crack. The stakes could not be higher. If this trajectory holds, the balance of global power will not shift gradually, it will lurch sharply. And in that moment, countries caught between hammer and anvil, like South Korea, will be forced to choose between Washington's demands and Beijing's rise. So, to keep up with the rapid changes already reshaping our world, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next video.